who also has brought with him someone who has also done a lot for Mississippi. We're going to follow along with the program. You will see there on the back of the program the individuals who have sponsored this program. And as you will see that too, that this is a series that is in honor of Bill Collins, who really started all of this many years ago. And Marty Wiseman, who is not here today, they say that Marty was off working, and they say that Rex Buffington is off working. So these are some of his assistants, so they attest to that. But we did develop this series in honor of Dr. Collins, and we have benefited from it greatly. And I know that some of you have been very faithful in joining us, and we very much appreciate that. If you will look at your program, you will see that Dr. Jerry Gilbert, the Associate University Provost, will bring us a welcome on behalf of the university. Then we will hear from Julia Quarles, who is the Senior Policy Analyst in the Stennis Institute of Government. Then Brother Rogers, Brother Rogers, who is the Assistant Director of the Stennis Center for Public Service. We will hear from him. And then we will have remarks from Bobby Chain, who was a board member of IHL board for over 12 years. Is that right, Mr. Chain? And did so many outstanding things for the state of Mississippi and for higher education. And then we will hear from our very special guest, Governor Waller, and then Lee Whitehall. Did I say that? I practice. I know that there are several dignitaries in the audience, but I won't try to name all of those individuals, but I do want to recognize Bill Waller, Judge Bill Waller, if you would stand. He is a supporter of Mississippi State University and of the library, and is a graduate of Mississippi State, and he has with him his son Clayton. Would you say? So thank all of you for being here. Immediately after the program, we will have an opportunity to purchase one of the books that Governor Waller has written. So, Dr. Gilbert.
On behalf of President Fogelsong and Provost Rabideau, I want to extend a very warm welcome to all of you today and tell you what a great privilege it is to be in front of you today and to sit beside a man that I've admired all my life. I was telling the governor a few minutes ago that growing up in Jackson, one of my regrets is that I was not old enough to vote for him when he ran for governor in 1972. I was still a high school student, and then I was out of state when he ran again, so I regret. But the rest of my family that were of voting age were able to vote for you in that election. So it is a great privilege. I think you will find that the governor is one of the more visionary individuals that has come through the state. He will no doubt impress us all today with his comments. I'm, again, very privileged to welcome you here, and I'm excited about hearing what the governor has to say. So thank you.
Greetings from the Stennis Institute of Government. I was thinking Director Dr. Marty Wiseman sends his regards. He's in Phoenix at a Rural People, Rural Policies Conference sponsored by the Kellogg Foundation. The Stennis Institute is one of only 24 entities in the nation that participates in Rural People, Rural Policies. So it was very important for him to be there as much as he would desire to be here. So much for Dr. Wiseman, because today is all about you, Governor. And I met Governor Waller earlier in this decade when he and his son Bob and others were practicing with the Waller and Waller firm. I was a workers' compensation commissioner, and he appealed a case before me. I remember, Governor, I don't remember anything about the case, but I remember asking you how in the world you could get that post office box number 4 at the downtown post office in Jackson, and you just laughed and told me that it was available in 1951. I didn't learn much about you that day, except that you knew how to make a fine appellate argument, although I would have expected that. But a few months later, I was at an educational conference had the opportunity to sit by Justice Waller on my left and Commissioner Barney Scobie from Natchez, Mississippi, across the table. And I learned a lot about you. I learned that you prosecuted Byron Della Beckwith in his first criminal prosecution in Hinds County in 1963, and in the second one in 1964, both of them ended in mistrials because no one could reach for them as verdict. I learned that you appointed Lee Spanhauer Sutton, director of the Department of Human Services, the first woman to head a major agency in Mississippi. I learned that you integrated the highway patrol. I learned that you appointed Dr. Gwen Loper to the Board of Mental Health, the first black woman to be appointed to the state board. And I learned that you appointed Clarence Morgan of Kosciuszko to the 5th Circuit Court District in Mississippi, for which I thank you because he was so nice to me when I was a baby boy. And I learned that you appointed Miriam Simmons to the College Board, the first W graduate on the IHL. What I really learned, you see, is that Bill Jr. and Barney Scobie are big fans. But I learned a whole lot more as I devoured the book this week straight ahead. I learned of Miss Carroll's influence on your politics, your policy, your campaigns, and our governor's mansion. And I learned that you love to fish, and that you love your family, and that you love Mississippi, and that you love your God. And I learned that you made great strides in uniting the Democratic Party during a difficult period as you sought to make the Mississippi Democratic delegation representative of all of Mississippi's people, just as you sought to make your administration representative of all of Mississippi's people. And there's something else I learned. I learned that you spoke the truth on August 5th, 1967 in Boonville, Mississippi, during your first campaign for governor when you said yesterday's politics won't solve tomorrow's problems. The Stennis Institute recognizes you for your service to our state in many, many ways, not the least of which was to afford Justice Waller Jr. the opportunity to be a Mississippi State graduate. We thank you for Straight Ahead, Memoirs of a Mississippi Governor, a book that sheds light on the social and political culture of the 60s and 70s, a very difficult period in Mississippi history. The best kind of book, because it's a book that's filled with facts but not conclusions, and thus a book that allows us to ponder what the 60s and 70s in Mississippi would have been like had you not believed that yesterday's politics won't solve tomorrow's problems. Thank you so much for your contributions.
Thank you, Dana, very much for those fine comments. And on behalf of the Stennis Center for Public Service, let me welcome you to the Collins Lecture Series. I know that Dr. Bill Collins himself would have really enjoyed honoring Governor Bill Waller today because Dr. Collins was a proponent of good race relations. And of course, we know that Governor Waller was and is a man ahead of his time when it comes to race relations in Mississippi. The civil rights movement was just beginning to catch fire in Mississippi on the night in 1963 when white supremacist Byron Della Beckwith crouched in the honeysuckle across the street from NAACP leader Medgar Evers' house and shot him in the back. A brave young district attorney named Bill Waller immediately put out a reward for information leading to the conviction of Evers' killer. Governor Waller, who was about the same age as Medgar Evers, was the lead prosecutor in the two trials in the 60s to convict Byron Della Beckwith. It took a lot of courage to vigorously prosecute a controversial race murder case in Mississippi in the 1960s. Most people were probably shocked that anybody had even been arrested for the murder of Medgar Evers. Back then, it was rare that a white man who killed a black man was arrested at all. Bill Waller tried to convict Beckwith at a time when many white Mississippians probably would have preferred to look the other way. If that was all that he had done, he would be a hero in Mississippi. but he did so much more. His administration as governor was very much a turning point in Mississippi politics, as Lydia pointed out. He was a modern governor who didn't use the racially charged language of his predecessors. He cut off the funding for the Sovereignty Commission and was a great leader for our state. It's a privilege to have you as a true Mississippi hero on our campus today. I very much look forward to your remarks. Now, Governor Waller will be introduced by Mr. Bobby Chain. Mr. Chain is the founder and chief executive officer of a multi-million-dollar company, the Chain Electric Company. He served as mayor of the city of Hattiesburg. He's held 2 presidential appointments. It's been pointed out that he spent 12 years on the college board, and somehow in the midst of all of that, he found the time to found a national bank and serve as the president. So let's please give a warm Mississippi State welcome to Mr. Bobby Chain.
Thank you so much, brother, for those kind remarks. I'm always happy to be on this campus, and I want to say something, Governor and others, I've never said publicly before, but I spent 12 years observing 8 universities, knowing a lot about the inner workings, and now 20 years since I left, still interested in it. And I came to the conclusion that the best, well-rounded university we have in Mississippi State. I want you to know that. I'm especially appreciative of the opportunity to say something about my great friend, Governor Waller. I think he's done more to bring Mississippi back in line with the rest of the nation than any human being alive. It's, in my judgment, Governor Waller brought more meaningful and needed change in Mississippi than any governor in my lifetime. And I'll do my best to describe some of those changes here today. I first want to tell you what some very important people have said about Governor Waller. President Jimmy Carter said, when Bill Waller was elected governor in 1971, Mississippi was emerging from a long period of racial turmoil and isolation. With courageous and enlightened leadership, Governor Waller brought Mississippi back into the mainstream of American life and politics. Governor Haley Barber said, Bill Waller was the first Mississippi governor in modern times to assert and exercise the full authority of the executive branch of state government. Every governor since then has benefited from his leadership, and so have the citizens of the state. And they didn't all willingly submit to the governor, I remember, but we didn't give up. And that was what was so important. Senator Dale Bumpers of Arkansas said Bill Waller's courageous prosecution of the man who murdered Medgar Evers has won him high praise throughout the country. Governor Waller was a charter member of the new breed of Southern governors elected in the early 1970s. His memoir would shed new light on that exciting period of Southern history. And I agree with every word of what these great men think of Governor Waller. I welcome the opportunity to support Governor Waller in his first race, governor, and I was old enough, by the way. And then when he didn't win, I really did want him to run again, and he did, and he won. And I had some part in that, and was very happy to do it. And I knew, from the way he set out to perform his administration, Mississippi finally had a winner. I want to talk specifically about the impact that Governor Waller had on the educational opportunities for our young people, and more specifically, about his impact on the institution of higher learning. With Governor Waller's naming of the 4 trustees with 12-year appointments to the State College Board, the direction of the future of the institution of higher learning was forever changed. It was not business as usual anymore. Governor Waller had insisted on naming a younger group than other governors had named, believing that they would be more in line with the social and economic conditions facing Mississippi at that time. The governor preceding Governor Waller had named all appointees that had passed their 65th birthday. 3 of the 4 were Ole Miss graduates, which was about par for the course then, and 1 was a Mississippi State graduate, and no other school got represented, giving Ole Miss 7 of the total of 13 votes. This was typical of the governor's appointments since almost every governor attended school at Ole Miss. Governor Waller was an Ole Miss Law School graduate and loved the university, but he considered the board makeup unfair to the rest of the state. Governor Waller had two requirements for appointment in addition to his belief that his choice would be well qualified, and that you had never attended school at Ole Miss, and your age was less than 45. He made an exception for Dr. Bob Harrison, who was in his late 40s. Dr. Harrison was the first black ever named the state college board. And by the way, we could have never had a better person. He and I worked hand in glove together those 12 years, and what a privilege it was to me. He had a very successful background and was highly respected on all bases. The next appointment was Mary Simmons, who's already been mentioned here, a gifted high school principal from Columbia with a great interest in the education of young people. Mary was the first W graduate to ever be named to the board. She was the second woman ever named to the board in the history of the college board. The first had been almost 30 years earlier when the board was first put in place and had been 1 century. Next was Travis Parker, the first Delta State graduate to be named to the board. Travis Parker was a very successful Delta planner and premier businessman with a brilliant mind. I was the final appointment and from Hattiesburg, and a graduate of the University of Southern Mississippi, and the first graduate also to ever be named to the board for an institution in the history of the board. I was then, and I still am, a major construction contractor. I was a member of the board of Mississippi's largest bank, Father Guarantee Bank. Currently, I'm a member of the Federal Home Loan Bank of the United States. During my first year of service on the college board, a member from Oxford passed away. That spot had an Oxford member since the board was created in 1944. Matter of fact, they felt like in Oxford they owned that spot. Ole Miss insisted that a new member from Oxford be named, and they had a person selected. Dr. Giles, the president of Mississippi State, was in touch with Red Parker and me, asking if we try to get Mike Sterling, Mississippi State graduate, named. Many of you know Mike Sterling, I expect. Red and I asked Governor Waller to recommend Mike. The Ole Miss crowd had 6 votes, and when Governor Waller made that recommendation, we had 7. So you know who won. And Mississippi State could never have been represented until it got Rice Griffiths. Governor Waller had made promises during his campaign to see Mississippi would have its own dental school, its own school of architecture, its own vet school. The state of Mississippi was paying 100% of student costs to send students seeking these degrees out of the state, where we were able to pay 100% of whatever it took. They necessarily had to attend school out of the state, but we didn't have those degrees here. He further promised that all colleges that were not universities would get university status. With the passion and drive that Governor Waller had, the legislature was convinced to pass the appropriate legislation to accomplish all this remarkable, forward-looking event. Governor Waller's college board appointments were able to further be called by obtaining college board approval. These dramatic events were the first major change in decades in higher education in Mississippi. With the creation of the dental school, 50 more dentists each year were available to practice in Mississippi. Governor Waller asked the college board to increase the size of the medical school class to 150 a year from 100. And this was done. And this added 50 more positions each year available to practice in Mississippi. There were dramatic increases in other health-related professions that were very useful to our state. The physical therapy program became one of the top programs in the nation. The BS degree in nursing was expanded. Governor Waller's appointment brought about another change in our state to have more physicians. I was curious about why doctors of osteopathy were not practicing in our state and learned that they could not be licensed here. How long Governor Waller's other trustees began an effort to get them licensed. After all, their training is almost identical to medical doctors, MDs. And we had a real shortage of doctors around our state. The Board of Trustees turned to Dr. Cobb, who directed the Department of Health, and Governor Waller's appointment. Dr. Cobb agreed that the doctors that would be trained by the College Board and those that wanted to come to Mississippi would be helpful to solve the shortage. Dr. Cobb did whatever was necessary to get the approval of doctors of osteopathy practice in Mississippi. We didn't have full agreement on the college board. The medical school was not really that happy about it, but we passed it anyway. We had the ability to fund and funds to pay for any Mississippi student's education outside the state not be taught in the state. We immediately approached a number of young people who wanted to be doctors of osteopathy and believed all of them, and I believe every one of them practice in Mississippi today. This story never made the news, and maybe that helped us get it done. We probably have 20 doctors of osteopathy in Hattiesburg where I live, and they are active in almost every major town in Mississippi today. And it made a huge difference. These doctors can be trained in any discipline of medicine, neurosurgery, anything that MDs can be, and they are. And so it made a huge difference, and this story is not very well known, however. Mississippi was faced again with the Justice Department demand that the university be further desegregated. The purpose was to allow more other race students to attend the university of their choice. 2 of Waller's appointments volunteered to help bring this about. 11 other board members wouldn't have anything to do with it. Dr. Bob Harrison and myself, along with Dr. Thrash, who was the director of the college board, made more than 100 trips to Washington to negotiate the final plan of the Justice Department, something that Governor Waller was very much in favor of. Senator Jim Eastland, chairman of the Judiciary, was immensely helpful in the negotiation. Chan and Harrison spent 9 years on the effort, and today, 22 years later, the plan is still in place and working well. You can tell it right here on this campus. All campus degree granting centers were created in Natchez, Jackson, Meridian, and Gulfport in order to bring additional higher education opportunities to Mississippi young people. Today, they all flourish. Mississippi State still has one in Meridian. Polymer Science program was developed at the University of Southern Mississippi and achieved worldwide prominence during the term of the Waller appointments. Today, the program is rated in the top 3 in the world. The University of Southern Mississippi was given permission to grant technology degrees for the first time. Today, their graduates are in such demand that there's a waiting list for every graduate. A stadium was built at Southern that added 10,000 seats to a total of 36,000. If they don't play more better than they did last night, they're going to be going. The Gulf Coast Research Lab took on new prominence, and today is one of the premier programs in the United States. Delta State created the first aviation degree program, and today sends in graduate corporate jobs as well as airline pilot jobs. Delta State added a much-needed nursing school to provide nurses in the state. Mississippi State now has one of the premier architectural schools in the nation, and the architectural school and engineering programs have greatly expanded and are respected nationwide, if not worldwide. The vet school had a dramatic effect on the agricultural economy of Mississippi as a model of the nation. I want to stop a second and tell you a brief story that Bryce Griffiths told last year when the ceremony with the Danville Dormitory at him about how we got the architecture school at Ole Miss. It was a great fight on the board between Ole Miss and State. And Governor Waller thought it ought to be here. I thought it ought to be here because of engineering school, but the engineering school here, the real one. And we had 6 votes. Miriam Simmons could have been for 7 if we could get her to cooperate with us. And she was very unhappy that Dr. Giles and the president had made a request to the college board to create a master's degree in home economics at Mississippi State, which she thought would really do them the deputy. And so I went to Miriam and asked her, what would it take to get your vote to get Dr. Giles to back down on that request? So I called Dr. Giles and asked him if he'd rather have architect or home economist. He said, architect by all means. Why? I said, well, you know that program you asked for, home economics, you're going to send this program to Ole Miss. He said, by all means, it'll be dropped today. And I went to see her, she voted with us, 7-6 vote, architecture school is here. During the 12-year term, Waller appointees, more than $1 billion was spent on construction of the university system. Of course, all the trustees were involved in every aspect of expansion, but the Waller appointees helped lead the way. Governor Waller's influence with the legislature certainly made the financial resources available. You have an opportunity to learn more about this great man by reading his book. I hope all of you will read it. Thank you very much.
I'm very flattered, impressed, and somewhat embarrassed by the accolades which I received. Bobby, you didn't leave out anything that I put in that paper. Frances N. Colvin, very austere lady, artistically inclined, very much in favor of expanding the library services and operating the service at top speed. We thank you for your trouble. This didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of forethought, a lot of training, a lot of professional things that happen to make this possible. And Mrs. Ford, should I call you Judge? I thank you for those remarks. It's very unusual to have a lady speaking in terms of what's happened in the past. And William, brother, watchers, sisters, and the rest of us. Thank you for your remarks and for coming here today. Now, we've been here 30 minutes, and I believe there's some psychology going around that you can't keep an audience attention more than 20 minutes. So we're already overdue. So I want to give you a fast rundown. We felt like in the 30s and the 40s that this state should be 12th, 13th, 14th ranked nationally, rather than 48th, 49th. As soon as they had the state, we dropped one. You know, we were 48, then we were 49, then we became 50. So studying geography and learning a little bit over in the Oxford, Mississippi area, the rural schools, and then University High School at Oxford. I came to recognize, I thought, that this state had the climate, it had the natural resources, every inch of our land is arable, even the water will grow fish that have commercial value. Water is a resource. We have rivers and streams, we have underground water supply, we can get into aquatic agriculture or anything. We have law-abiding citizens. Geographically, we're in the middle of the South, not too far east and not too far west. But why we last? Or here at the bottom, here at the category. So those are some of the motivations that passed through my mind in my earlier years that said that there's something wrong. We must be competitive or better than Arkansas. We must be competitive or better than Louisiana and Alabama and Kentucky and West Virginia and so forth. So I became a little bit kind of like maybe the Civil War was not over in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. It was kind of like we have the past, and we're going to hold on to the past. We're not going to change. We like what we had, and we're not going to move forward. So with those motivations in mind, I decided to make a $100 low, almost impossible race for governor. I believe there were 7 candidates in the race in 1967. The opportunity came, I think, when the state realized after Medgar Evers explained that we had to make some changes, and I think I would have to be in the right place at the right time. You know, political success is not always what you plan for. It's being in the right place at the right time. So, although I didn't do too well in '67, I had a fairly good showing in '71. Now, we took on, and this is pretty well documented in the book. Let me say this, digress, and I want you to be sure you understand this. There's no other book like this published. According to the Mississippi Department of Archives and History, according to historical history scholars like Dr. David Simpson, who consulted with us, there is no other book that has a history accurate statement of what happened during a period of our Mississippi history. This book does relate back to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. And then after I became back in private law practice, it relates to some of the things that happened on up through 2006. We have hoped that this would not be a vain paper that an ego trip or an ex-politician, and we strived diligently. Bill Jr. and members of our family worked on the case real hard, worked on the book. And I'd like for you to remember that this is a source, we think, of reference, of studying history, of checking events and dates and places. And we had the Department of Archives and History cooperating with us. And it was a lot of work. It took us over 2 years. And it's not a commercial enterprise. I'm not John Gresham. I knew John Gresham when he was giving his books out of the trunk of his car. Free. But anyway, I hope when you look at this book, you'll consider it one of a kind. You'll think of it in terms of an accurate record, the history of what happened then and now. So, with that in mind, I want to kind of echo what Bobby Chain said. We thought this position of being last related to probably 50 different things, all the way down to grammar school education and, of course, higher education. We got to looking around the state. I started shaking hands with teenagers that had black teeth. And I said, now, what's wrong here? Where's the dentist? Found out that our dental students go to Tennessee, University of Tennessee. Then we were big in agriculture, where our veterinarians go. And the allied science, we found out they went to war. We had a tough fight to get the veterinary school and 13 allied science and the School of Architecture in the state. We tried real hard to put our young people at an advantage that they had not had before. The state, of course, was paying tax money out of state to keep these professional schools operating. So, with a mixture of alumni, legislators, college board members, we were able to put together the dental school. I cut the ribbon during my administration. We increased the medical school, the School of Architecture, and the School of Veterinary Medicine, which I believe was about 5 or 6 years in development. It was not quick because we had to meet all the standards. Then, after I was thought I might run again for governor, I found all the architects in the state mad at me because they didn't want a school they would go to Duke or Alabama or someplace like that. All the veterinarians were mad at me because they wanted to support Auburn and they didn't want Mississippi State to have a veterinary school. And of course, the dentists like the University of Tennessee, and they hated Ole Miss Dental School, to put it bluntly. But we survived, and I think higher education got to move on now. Some of you professional educators, this gentleman over here got a PhD and several degrees. He's been in the late 16 years. I wonder why we got 8 universities. 2 million population and 8 universities. And our resources are split. Our campus involvement is split. We have 17,000 students at state. If we didn't have NUW and Delta State, we might have 30,000. But why do we have 8 universities? Why are we state with medium resources, maybe poor resources, why are we supporting 8 senior colleges and universities? Well, that question came to me 200 times, and the answer was every time, no change. We're going to keep them all. So we elevated 5 of them from college status to university status. That's Mississippi Valley State, Alcorn State, MUW, Jackson State, and one more. We had 3 universities, now we got 8. So we think that was an advancement forward. As of today, I think our state is moving fast. I want to congratulate the current administration. His name could be Bobby Chain, and that could be Barbara. But we are moving forward fast, and institutions like Mississippi State are responsible for that, putting out graduating outstanding young professionals, many of whom are staying in the state fortunately, and adding to our infrastructure. Fortune's 500 just named Lester Anthony Jackson as one of the wealthiest men in the nation, worth over $2 billion. Started from scratch. Went to high school, Central High School in Jackson, made every dime, not in everything. It made it. So there's some opportunities out there for us for the future. I want to conclude by saying that I have a soft spot in my heart for Mississippi State. When I was elected governor, there was the chair makers would bring a rocking chair to the mansion and want me to sit in the Mississippi rocking chair, and I had a few gifts like that, and the kind of token gifts that were not real valuable, but Mississippi State found out that I like bulldogs. And all of a sudden he showed up in the governor's mansion one day with a bulldog. So I'm the only governor, I think, y'all check me out, I'm the only governor that had a Mississippi State bulldog in the governor's office. So I'm pleased to be here, honored and flattered that you would stay all this long period of time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't want to close out without acknowledging Bryce Griffiths back here, who has probably contributed several $1 million of his time that he didn't collect, contributed to higher education in Mississippi. Let's give that to him in a round of applause. Maybe we got 2 or 3 governors, Well, any questions, any comments? Again, thank you to the committee for its austere reception. Yes, ma'am?
Would you give us your thoughts on whether or not the governorship should be 2 years, 4 years?
Well, that leads me into a 30-minute discussion. Going back to the Civil War, we had, for whatever reason, clipped the governor's wings and made it very, very weak governor. Louisiana, as you know, you historians know, has the strongest executive branch. Mississippi has the weakest branch. That's documented by several studies that have been made through the years. And when I was governor, it was 1 term. And we lobbied and worked and, begged and pled with the legislature. We got the Senate passed a constitutional resolution every year, all 4 years. We never could get the House to agree on it. And if you look back and you're real interested in it, you're going to find that Mississippi's progress has been negated or slowed down by the House, not the Senate. For some reason, we have too many representatives and they never agree on the progress. They agree on the past, but they don't agree on the future. So I think our state suffered. Ray Mavis, who was elected governor in 1987, was the first governor that was allowed to succeed himself. And he ran in 1991 and was defeated by Kirk Fordyce. Kirk Fordyce was re-elected in 1995. He's the first governor in the history say that I had, you know, gone all the way back, but I don't think so. The one time we had a 2-year term, and it may have been unlimited succession back in 1800 sometime, but in modern times, it's the first governor that we've had that served 8 years, 8 consecutive years. So to answer the lady's question, I think that's a step forward. The governor is not a lame duck until he's elected the second time. And the governor has about a year and a half of good honeymoon with the legislature, and then they start cutting crops out for the last 3.5 years of the term, unless he's eligible to run again. So that was a pretty good move. Any other comments? Go ahead.
We know Del Beckwith was retried in recent times, and your efforts were not successful. Do you think we should move towards having more trials of previous lack of success?
Our justice system is antiquated, and there are a lot of changes that could be made. And I've been a prosecutor and thought about it a lot, and simply with the times have changed and the volume of crime double and redouble every few years. We got 33,000 people in the state penitentiary, and about 3,000 waiting to go, plus about 10,000 standing by for trial. So the lady brought up a subject that we all need to do a little thinking on. That is how to speed up the administration of criminal justice so that those who are not obey the law are not allowed to do repetitive crime. You take a jury panel and put them in a courtroom today, and you say, any of your boy in here been a victim of a crime? About half the hands go up. What about 2 crimes? A third of the hands go up. What about 3 crimes? 20% of the hands go up. So there's a lot of victims of crime out there that we have not protected. And the system is not keeping up with mores and folkways of our society. Eat a little, drink a little, pocket pill, and shoot somebody. It's a very tragic situation, but we've got to do something about it.
Governor, who was your political hero? Who did you look up to?
Well, this is kind of mixed emotion. I thought Senator Eastwood, somehow he and his family, my family, had a little bit of camaraderie back through the years, and I knew about it. But Senator Eastman had the president and all of the cabinet members and everybody in Washington were very loyal. And when we needed something for the state, and we needed a lot, and we got a lot, we'd usually give Senator Stennis and Senator Eastman to help us. So I don't really have one hero, but that's one example. I like J.B. Coleman. J.B. Coleman was a real statesman. I don't know whether you realize it or not in the book here. We point out, and listen to this, we point out that Coleman is going to put a veterans hospital in Jackson. And the federal government required that he, as governor of the state, sign a compact. It said that the employees would be equally powerful in the races. There would be no discrimination in staffing the hospital or in the patient agreement. And he signed the compact with the federal government to get the VA hospital in Jackson, and the press, the Klan the legislature, and everybody got boiling mad because J.B. Coleman got a VA hospital in Jackson. And that is, I think that tells you a lot right there. We had such a steel wall in front of us and change as far as the anything different. That's what's been done lockstep without any change. Any other questions? I might take you with me. All right, thank you very much, and I hope State wins homecoming. You ready to win?
I have a little something from the Students Montgomery Association, the library, Student Center, and Students Institute. Appreciation for you coming out and sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And
Not taking it.
Mr. Train, also, for you, we appreciate you being able to back. I must share a quick story. I knew who Bill Waller was before I knew who Bill Waller. I grew up in Columbia fishing, only Bill Waller, with my granddaddy. So, always knew who Bill Waller was, and it's a pleasure to meet you today. Thank you again for coming and hearing a history lesson in Mississippi politics, and we thank you again for your service. You changed Mississippi for the better, and not all leaders can say that in past history. We invite you all to a reception and the book signing following, and also tonight the Students Montgomery Association is hosting the gubernatorial debate between Governor Barker and Mr. John Hinds. And we hope that all of y'all will be able to come out to Lee Hall at 7 o'clock for that. Thank y'all for coming.